So I'm a huge, huge, huge Led Zeppelin fan as a teen. So my memory isn't. It's like I remember some amazing things about the albums, and then other things it's just like gone because of how stoned I was at certain times. But the cover art is totally bizarre. Led Zeppelin is totally amazing. And it, to me, we just started in this pseudo modern representation of the Mellotron. Radiohead is they're always years ahead of the rest of us. And then Led Zeppelin was in their own way ahead of a lot of us, but mostly in the way that they brought past ideas together. And so I'm just so excited to sort of go into an older world where the approach was very different, where everything truly was analog. And so here is the Rain Song.
The second season, I'm too low. You are the sunlight in my growing. So little warmth I've felt before. It isn't hard to feel me glowing. I watched the fire that grew so low. to recognize. Oh, these things are clear to all from time to time. Ooh.
This is the 300B strings for sure.
Okay.
Yes, because you can hear it. It's a lot of cello being played, but it doesn't sound so. It doesn't sound like the normal 400 cello, because when it goes down in the octaves, you don't have the the lowest 5 notes or so of the Mellotron cello is actually an upright that sounds completely different from the rest of the recording, because it's not a cello, and it's also recorded in a way so that there's a very, very intense attack, and then it falls off really quickly and stays at a certain level. You can hear that in Oasis, I think in Oasis Wonderbar, but in a lot of prog records, they even use this gnarly kind of attack that the lowest notes of the Mellotron cello have. So, but this is not the case in here. And if one listens to the track really carefully, it's a very intricate arrangement, because it's not only this sound. It is also, I believe it's also the 3 violins, but I can't say 100% for sure. But it's definitely using a lot of. There's definitely like at least 2, maybe 3 trackings going on.
Yeah.
There's multiple trackings done on this on the Mellotron arrangement, so to say, and it's a very intricate arrangement where the bass notes come in and out, and the higher notes float in and out also.
Very Jimmy Page.
Yeah, exactly, and John Paul Jones, who was a great arranger.
Yeah.
So the thing here is the interesting thing about the 300 is also that it had a much bigger keyboard than the 400. It's an almost 5 octave keyboard. So when we took these sounds into the digital realm, one more comment about the big keyboard. Only a few of the sounds go across the whole keyboard. So it's only the string sound, and there's 2 masters for the 300. It's the A and the B master. So the 300A strings on the A master go all across the keyboard, and the 300B strings go all across the keyboard on the B master. Then there's a piano sound, and there's an organ sound, that at least one organ sound that go also across the whole keyboard. The other sounds have the lead sounds on the right part of the keyboard, the 3 octaves of let's say clarinet and flute, which is totally different. All of these sounds are totally different from the other libraries and the Mark II libraries. They were re-recorded. So and then the lowest 17 notes were rhythms. And we haven't published those yet, actually. So the 300 rhythms are still something that are in the archive.
Exciting.
So, yes, exactly. so that's one thing, important thing to bear in mind. So we the way we solved it when you put it into the digital realm is that we have the high and low. There's 2 banks. The high part of the 300B strings, for example, and then the low part of the 300B strings, and they overlap, of course, a little bit because it's not 6 octaves of sounds, basically. So at the bottom of the 300B strings, you can hear a very nice cello, and it goes all the way down to some very low notes. So they probably detuned down that cello. And then we have probably in the middle we have a viola, and then violins up on the higher notes. So therefore it makes it a little bit hard to hear if we're dealing with somebody playing a 300 all across the keyboard,
Right.
or if it's multiple takes. Now, the one thing that one could be certain of is that if it was recorded at this track was recorded at the studio, there's a chance that this studio might have had a 300 Mellotron. One thing that's for certain is that they would never have lugged a really, really heavy 300 Mellotron out into the bushes, basically, and taking it with them out on to Headley Grange.
Right.
So, but it's kind of rare that they put the 300 strings on the 400 frames, because the lowest notes don't quite correspond to the range of the 400. So it's kind of an intricate thing, and it sounds like he's going really down in the bass register. So one would have to be really picking this apart to be able to find out, to know if he was using a 300, or if he was using a 400 with 300 sounds in the tape frame, which is something that they rarely did, and they would not have gotten that low down in the octaves. Mm-hmm. So it's a really intricate arrangement, and there one can definitely do a bit of research on this. What you can hear on the live tracks is that it sounds very different, and it's not, of course, as intricate, and there's not as many bass notes. Basically, the cello doesn't go down that far, and what he
on the live version, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Live.
Was he playing a 400 or a 300 live?
No, 400, definitely. They only toured with the 400.
Okay.
You don't want to take a 300
it's just
with
so
you.
Big.
It's they're like it's something in between the 400 and the 3 and the Mark II, which is exactly what when they came out. They came out in like 67-ish.
Got it.
And they were only made about 30 of them, and they have a cycling mechanism, and they have quarter-inch tapes, actually. So they have the tape is flimsier. So it's a bit of that one is a little bit of
an anomaly.
It doesn't,
An anomaly.
It's definitely an anomaly, and it's very rare, and it doesn't quite do either of what the Mark II does really well, which is kind of a lounge instrument, and then the 400 being like a pro portable instrument. It doesn't do either of those very well.
It's like the viola of the Mellotron family. It just kind of doesn't
the what do you call it when you have when you have like animals that are fantasy animals made out of two different species?
Oh yeah,
Griffin, isn't that?
Yeah, Griffin. Yeah.
Griffin. Exactly.
Yeah.
Griffin.
Yeah. Exactly. No, that's a great. Yeah. I played the viola in high school, and my friends would always tell me that it was kind of a useless instrument. So that's kind of
I wouldn't agree at all. But it's like it's so. But the 300 is definitely a strange combo of two concepts. That doesn't really work very well, and there's very few of them around because of that reason.
Right.
So it what we say in Sweden, it tries to sit on two chairs at the same time.
Right. So. I love that phrase. I wish we said that in America. I'm imagining like an instrument with like 2 feet and 2 different Venn diagrams, but like not really able to satisfy the needs of anybody. And so when they would tour, and during this era, they would have a specific tape frame for their set. Would they ever change it in the middle of this?
No.
Like, was there an intermittent? No. Okay.
I'm really certain about that. So they had the flute, of course, for Stairway to Heaven, and then they had you can of course mix tracks, so it's kind of tricky to figure out what exactly they had. So he could have been standing there mixing between 2 tracks when he was playing like the Rain Song or something. It's kind of they basically they only used the Mellotron for these 2 tracks live. So one would have to analyze that a little bit further if he was mixing or switching between two tracks. From what I can hear, it mostly sounds like he has some sort of custom mix of cello and strings, and I have never seen a tape frame that had some sort of mix of the higher and lower registers of the 300 violin. So my guess would be that it's either a mix of the cello, the 400 cello, and the viola, or the 400 cello and the solo violin, which is the three violins, of course. The solo. So it's kind of hard to say what exactly he's using there, but on the studio track, it is definitely a 300 sound for sure.
It's so beautiful. The group strings are so
three
sad.
violins, you mean?
Yeah, more, you said 3 violins or 4 violins. Three. So sad. And it's so interesting to hear them in the context of a fully analog recording. Like the approach that, as like a music listener of in obsessive compulsive versions of that, what I hear in a recording like from Zeppelin in the 70s is a special attention to getting the sound right, and then you record the sound, versus how a lot of musicians work today, which is a combination of that and creating sounds with synthesizers or computers, or just altering sounds in the box, so to say. So it's like really fascinating to just hear a true resolution, if you will, version of those violins that also are like nostalgic in a way, because we have heard them so many times. Like they are part of our just like musical zeitgeist, like they're just in pop music, that sad string sound. And then of course, like strings are a popular part of sad music and disco and all of that stuff. But these specific violins, like, I don't know, it's just really, really, really cool to hear them this way.
Yeah, and it would be really interesting to know if they made a conscious decision, or if the 300 was just standing in the studio. That would be a really interesting thing to know. It definitely, the 300 strings are definitely a great sound. It's just that it's before the digital Mellotron. It was of course extremely difficult to get to them, basically because they were not readily available on the 400 tape frames. And how many people have a working 300 Mellotron?
Right.
Not very many. So it's a very rare sound, and that's often also why people have been debating this a little bit back and forth. What it ties together with the Radiohead song is, of course, that when you start listening carefully to it, it's a very intricate arrangement that both, like in the Radiohead song, it floats around in the stereo view and in the stereo spectrum, and it's definitely different takes that they consciously made it into an arrangement, and that's of course a good connection to the last song, the previous song
it makes me nervous. They like, you can hear the labor, that was days if not weeks.
And then all the other takes and the other arrangements, the piano that comes in, and the of course the drums, the guitars and everything, and it's quite John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page. They definitely put a bunch of thought into that whole process, and the way it's mixed also. They were riding the faders when they were mixing it, so the important stuff would come out, and it's masterful.
That's what I love, for sure. Like, and I think that a lot of people who still appreciate, in my generation, who still appreciate this sort of era, and many, many eras from prior to Pro Tools days, is that sort of like your brain, because the tools are different, the way that the brains of the creative musicians behind those tools would work and prioritize. And, there was, I mean, this is so cliche at this point, but that kinetic experience of actually sitting behind the board, and there's no visual, like no graphic representation of what you're making, and you know, during this era where it was totally normal to create this like very vast set of variations on like one or two totally brilliant musical themes, like the all of the different things that happen in these two particular songs that we hear like multiple variations of throughout the song, and it's just totally understood and respected that that's the point of the record, you know.
Yeah.
And Robert Plant is just like one more instrument, you know. He's not necessarily like, and now Robert is going to sing, you know, the thing that we're supposed to remember. It's like all of these parts are memorable. Every single part is so memorable. What a wonderful thing.
But we might be coming back to that, because now that there's so much stuff documented, and it's even been like there's been released, Jimmy Page has released remasters where there's extra tracks and stuff. So, and I haven't dug that far into it, but it's just to compare that The Song Remains the Same live version of this track to how it sounds in the studio version is so interesting. And one thing that we do know for sure, of course, is that on the live track it's definitely a 400. That's for sure.
Right.
that we can be very certain of. But still, we don't know exactly what sounds that they had on that tape frame.
The touring unit.
But it's either it's a combination of the what I would say the 400 cello. I don't think they put the 300 sounds on there, and then the viola and the three violins. Among those, definitely they selected some sounds among those. Incredible. And they like I said, they had two tracks on that 3-track tape frame when they had the flute on one track for sure, and then so they could have been like doing some intricate stuff there just with those 2 extra tracks, so to say.
So cool. So yeah, we'll definitely have to come back, like specifically to this record, but also just Zeppelin in general.